Hello, Facebook. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and things are getting crazy over there. People are pretty mad at Russians. And I'm here to do two things. One, remind you Russian people are not Vladimir Putin. They're not the same thing, right? In the same way, like Japanese Americans during World War II that we all decided to stuff into internment camps. They weren't the Emperor of China. They weren't Admiral Yamamoto. Like, what? These two things are not the same, right? Okay, so we understand that. We understand that, like, hating Russian people for what the Russian government does is stupid, right? We all, if you're watching the channel, you know that. And yes, somebody's going to come at me with, but the oligarchs. Okay, all right. Very few of the oligarchs have a tremendous amount of power and some ability to guide Russian decision making at the governmental level. Yeah, possibly. It's incredibly unlikely you're dealing with one of those people. But we have an example where you could be today, and we're going to get to that in a second with the second part of this message, which is to remind everyone that in the United States, in all 50 states, we have laws that protect against national origin discrimination, right? If, trying to think of an example here. If you're from Mongolia and you go to work one day and you're working legally here in the U.S. and you just happen to be from Mongolia, someone can be like, I don't like the land management practices of the Mongolian government, and I hate you because you were from Mongolia. You're fired. Well, that would be bizarre, but it would also be illegal. It would be illegal in the United States. And I think that's really important to remind folks because there's a whole bunch of folks getting really mad at Russian people as if your Russian stylist down at the salon had something to do with this invasion. Guess what? She did not. Nothing to do with it. They were not secretly feeding the now defunct KGB and Spetsnaz info on like how to invade Odessa. That was not happening, I assure you. Now, let's touch on examples here. I don't know if any of you are Formula One fans. Statistically speaking, probably you're not, because most of my audience is based in the U.S. And people in the U.S. don't really care at all about Formula One. They should. It's fascinating and wild and crazy to watch. But there are drivers from many different nations who drive in Formula One, including one fellow named Nikita Mazepin. And a little background on Nikita. He sucks. He's a really bad driver. Like, you could make an argument that he is such a bad driver, he's not safe to be in the league. Eventually, he's so incompetent, I believe he'll likely kill someone through sheer incompetence. Not like through bravery or like pettiness or anything. Just incompetence. Like, oop, did I do that? I killed Lewis Hamilton, right? Like something insane like that could happen. That's how bad he is. Now, that being said, he's been allowed to race because his daddy gave a lot of money to a team called Team Haas, Haas. And Team Haas appears to have parted ways with Mazepin, who I affectionately call Mazza Spin because he spins his car out so much. They appear to have let him go not because he's horrible, not because he's kind of a dick, not because he's a bit of a moron. They let him go because he's Russian. And you had a bunch of legal reasons, very good ones, but you took one that is definitely illegal. And I will say, it's not illegal in much of Europe. Like, it's always fascinating when a French financial institution comes to do business in the U.S. because they tend to have France first policies where they heavily prefer employees of French national origin. And they get sued a lot because they'll say things like France first. And you're like, yeah, buddy, can't do that. I can remember a case for discrimination at a Japanese institution where the allegation was, oh, you prefer individuals of Japanese descent. And the response was, yeah, of course. What? Wait, what? But you can't do that. Oh, no, that's like the national policy on this from their perspective, right? They have a very different perspective on this. And part of that's because the U.S. is a melting pot. You know, I mean, it's different. It's different here. Now, there's already litigation on this idea of stripping Mazepin, affectionately termed, of his spot. But it doesn't look like they're touching on this national origin discrimination issue yet. And I think they could. I think there's sufficient context to the U.S. that could and perhaps should be in play as a claim. But it doesn't look like it is yet. It looks like right now it's a contract dispute, making the argument, hey, I gave you lots of money under the agreement that you would have my son race for you. Which I would think can't feel good, but I'm not the son of an oligarch, so I don't know how that makes Mr. Mazepin feel, but it wouldn't make me feel great. I can say that much. And I use this somewhat, hopefully funny example about someone who is fabulously wealthy and is probably going to be just fine, to kind of provide an example of like what not to do to the rest of the world who isn't the baby of an oligarch with like a silver spoon in her or his mouth. Don't do horrible things to Russian nationals living in the U.S. because some bad Russians are doing bad things, right? It's a big country. There's a lot of people. Similar to our country, there are good people and bad people. You can't just be like, I mean, you can make an counter argument. Our government faked finding weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They just flatly made that up so they could invade. They wanted oil. They killed a lot of people. A lot of people. For like 20 years, they killed people over fake weapons of mass destruction. In a world where you can just hurt Russian people because of what their government did, you can also just hurt American people, U.S. citizens, because of what the U.S. government did. I'm not playing this moral relativism. I'm not being like, oh, we did the same, so we should let Russia get away with it. No. I'm not. I'm just saying, if you're thinking about hurting Russian people because of what their government did, you're a problem. You're part of the problem. And also, if your own logic was applied to you, your life would become very difficult very fast. So stop it. Just stop it. All right? Like and subscribe. Helps me to help more people just like you. And comment down below. I know someone's going to make the argument like, well, oligarchs are different. To an extent, maybe on a moral level, not necessarily in the eyes of the law. Like, the law is not like, you don't get as many protections because you're wealthy. In fact, I could make the argument it's much the opposite if you don't have the right attorney. Take care, everybody. Like and subscribe. Helps me to help more people just like you.